Here's something the Kremlin doesn't want you to know. Europe's combined economy is over 10 times larger than Russia's. Europe's defense spending in 2024 exceeded China's and was more than 3 times Russia's military budget. And Europe is just getting started. While headlines scream about Russian aggression and European weakness, the actual numbers tell a completely different story. Russia is burning through Soviet-era stockpiles at an unsustainable rate, losing equipment faster than it can produce replacements, and facing a demographic and economic crisis that makes long-term victory mathematically impossible. Meanwhile, Europe is waking up. Defense spending hit record highs in 2024, 343 billion euros, and climbing to 381 billion euros in 2025. Germany became the 4th largest military spender globally. Poland's defense budget skyrocketed to over 4% of GDP. And this is just the beginning. Today we're breaking down the cold, hard facts about why Russia cannot win a prolonged conflict with a united Europe. We're talking economics, military capability, technology, demographics, and strategic depth. The numbers don't lie, and they paint a very different picture than Russian propaganda wants you to believe. Let's dive in. Let's start with the most fundamental factor in any modern conflict: economic power. In 2024, EU defense expenditure reached 343 billion euros, rising for the 10th consecutive year. In 2025, it is expected to reach an estimated 381 billion euros. Now compare that to Russia's estimated defense budget of $149 billion. The EU's total defense spending in 2024 exceeds China's by about 1.5 times and is more than 3 times as high as Russia's military budget. But defense spending is just one piece of the puzzle. Let's look at the underlying economies. According to the International Monetary Fund, the EU's share of global GDP and PPP is expected to be 14.34% for 2024, only behind China and the US, compared to a mere 2.84% for Russia. Think about what that means. Russia's entire economy represents less than 3% of global GDP. The European Union alone represents nearly 15%. In absolute terms, Russia's GDP is roughly $2.2 trillion. The EU's combined GDP is over $17 trillion. Add the UK at $3.3 trillion, and you're looking at over $20 trillion in economic power on the European side. You need the economic capacity to produce ammunition, vehicles, electronics, and all the infrastructure that keeps a military functioning. Russia simply cannot compete at this level indefinitely. Defense and security spending accounted for approximately 40% of Russia's total government spending in 2025, exceeding combined spending on education, healthcare, social policy, and the national economy. That's not sustainable. Russia is cannibalizing its future to fund the present war. They're spending 7% of GDP on military, while Europe is ramping up from 2% toward 3.5 to 5%. The economic fundamentals are stark. Europe can afford a prolonged military buildup. Russia cannot. Let's talk about military capability. Not theoretical power, but actual boots, tanks, and ammunition. First, personnel. Russia currently has about 1.3 million active troops. That sounds impressive until you realize that NATO's European members combined, plus Ukraine, have nearly 2.8 million active personnel. Turkey alone has 355,200 active troops. Poland has expanded to 202,100. The UK maintains 184,860. France, Germany, Italy, Spain each contribute substantial forces. When combined, Europe vastly outnumbers Russia in available military personnel. But what about equipment? Here's where it gets interesting. Since January 2024, Russia has lost roughly 1,149 armored fighting vehicles, 3,098 infantry fighting vehicles, 300 self-propelled artillery, and 1,865 tanks. These aren't Ukrainian claims. These are confirmed losses with photographic evidence. Russia is losing equipment at 2 to 5 times the rate of its opponent. And Ukraine represents only a fraction of European military power. Now here's the critical part. Russia cannot replace these losses through new production. T-90M tanks are the only model still produced from scratch, with an estimated 250 units built per year. Russia likely produces no more than 300 new tanks annually, less than half of what is lost in offensives. According to the latest available estimates, Russia's armed forces have already lost more than half of their available military hardware. They're literally running out of tanks and armored vehicles. Meanwhile, Europe is ramping up production. In 2024, defense investments grew at an exceptional rate, increasing by 42% compared to 2023 and reaching a record high of 106 billion euros. Germany increased defense spending by 28% in a single year, Poland by 31%. This isn't just maintaining existing forces, this is massive expansion and modernization. Europe's defense industry includes some of the world's most advanced manufacturers: Rheinmetall, Leonardo, Safran, BAE Systems, Thales. These companies produce cutting-edge equipment that's generations ahead of most Russian systems. The production gap will only widen as European defense spending accelerates over the next 5 years. Here's where Europe's advantage becomes truly decisive. Technology. Modern warfare isn't just about having more tanks, it's about having smarter tanks. It's about precision-guided munitions, advanced communications, cyber capabilities, electronic warfare, and artificial intelligence. Europe dominates Russia in virtually every technological category. From 2021 to 2024, investment into European defense technology startups increased 500% from the preceding 3 years. Private investment into European deep tech defense and security startups and scale-ups hit a record high of over 5 billion euros in 2024, marking a five-fold surge compared to 2019. Europe is investing heavily in AI-powered systems, autonomous drones, cyber warfare capabilities, and space-based assets. These technologies are force multipliers that give smaller, more advanced militaries enormous advantages over larger but less sophisticated opponents. Take drones as an example. In Ukraine, drones equipped with AI-enabled autonomous navigation have transformed battlefield effectiveness, increasing hit probability from just 10 to 20% to 70 to 80%. This kind of precision dramatically reduces the advantage of having more equipment. The European Defence Fund is pouring over 1 billion euros annually into next-generation technologies. The EU Defence Innovation Scheme supports startups and SMEs developing breakthrough capabilities. NATO's Innovation Fund is investing in dual-use technologies that benefit both civilian and military applications. Compare this to Russia. The EU and its member states are spending 14.4 billion euros annually on military research and development, compared to 130 billion euros in the US. Russia's R&D spending is a fraction of Europe's, and the sanctions have crippled their access to advanced semiconductors, electronics, and other critical components. Russia is increasingly reliant on importing drones from Iran and ammunition from North Korea. That's not the behavior of a technologically advanced military power, that's desperation. Meanwhile, European companies are developing hypersonic missiles, next-generation fighter aircraft, advanced air defense systems, and cyber capabilities that Russia simply cannot match. Europe's F-35 fleet alone represents technology that Russia has no counter for. The technological gap between European and Russian forces will only grow wider as European R&D spending accelerates and Russian access to advanced technology remains restricted by sanctions. Let's talk about something that doesn't get enough attention. People. Russia has a population of about 144 million. The European Union has 450 million. Add the UK, Norway, and other European allies, and you're looking at over 500 million people on the European side. That's a more than 3-to-1 advantage in population, which means more potential soldiers, more workers for defense industries, and more taxpayers to fund military spending. But Russia's demographic situation is actually much worse than the raw numbers suggest. Russia has an aging population with a low birth rate, the working-age population is shrinking, and the war in Ukraine has already killed an estimated 250,000 Russian soldiers with over 950,000 total casualties. These aren't just numbers, these are skilled workers, fathers, engineers, and young men who will never contribute to Russia's economy or have children. The demographic impact will be felt for generations. Russia is also experiencing massive brain drain. Hundreds of thousands of educated, skilled Russians have left the country since the invasion began. These are precisely the people Russia needs to maintain a modern, technologically advanced military and economy. Europe, meanwhile, has a vastly larger pool of human capital. While European countries also face demographic challenges, they have immigration to offset population decline, and they're investing heavily in automation and technology to compensate for smaller militaries. European universities produce hundreds of thousands of engineers, computer scientists, and technical specialists annually. Russia's education system has deteriorated significantly and cannot compete at this level. In a prolonged conflict, the side with more people, better education, and intact demographics wins. Europe has all three advantages. Now let's talk about strategic depth, the ability to absorb losses, maintain supply lines, and sustain operations over time. Russia has vast territory, but most of it is Siberian wasteland with minimal infrastructure. The Russian economy and population are concentrated in relatively small areas, mostly west of the Urals. Russia's infrastructure is aging and poorly maintained. Europe, by contrast, has exceptional infrastructure, high-speed rail networks, modern highways, robust energy grids, advanced telecommunications, multiple deep-water ports. This infrastructure makes moving troops, equipment, and supplies vastly more efficient than in Russia. The EU has also been investing heavily in military mobility, the ability to move forces quickly across borders. The Connecting Europe facility has allocated 1.7 billion euros to support military mobility projects, ensuring that European forces can respond rapidly to threats anywhere on the continent. Then there's the alliance factor. Europe isn't just the EU, it's NATO, which includes the United States, Canada, and other powerful allies. While the focus here is on European capability, the reality is that any Russian attack on Europe would likely trigger Article 5, bringing in the full weight of the alliance. But even without the US, Europe has strong partnerships. The UK remains deeply integrated with European defense despite Brexit. Norway contributes significant military capability. Sweden and Finland joining NATO add substantial forces and strategic territory. Russia, by contrast, has virtually no meaningful military allies. Belarus is economically dependent on Russia, but adds minimal military capability. North Korea and Iran can supply some ammunition and drones, but they're not going to send troops or provide advanced technology. China might provide economic support, but they're not going to risk confrontation with Europe and NATO over Russian territorial ambitions. China's priority is economic stability and global trade. A major European war would devastate Chinese economic interests. Russia is essentially alone. Europe is part of the world's most powerful military alliance with deep economic and security partnerships across the globe. So here's what you need to understand. Russia is not invincible. They're not even particularly strong compared to a united Europe. They've leveraged surprise, aggression, and Europe's complacency to create the illusion of power. But the fundamentals tell a different story. Europe's economy is 10 times larger. Europe's population is 3 times bigger. Europe's technology is generations ahead. And Europe's industrial capacity, once fully mobilized, will dwarf Russia's ability to compete. The question isn't whether Russia can defeat Europe. The question is whether Europe will maintain the unity and political will necessary to deter Russian aggression. Because if Europe stays united, Russia cannot win. What do you think? Will Europe maintain this momentum, or will political divisions undermine the defense buildup? Let me know in the comments. If you found this analysis valuable, hit that like button and subscribe for more geopolitical deep dives, and check out my video on Europe's shadow war with Russia to see how this conflict is already playing out. Thanks for watching, and remember, numbers don't lie.